Officially welcome us here into this space, but thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Carrington Lott, and I am the Deputy Director at Systems for Action. And if you are not super familiar with Systems for Action, we are a national research program office funded by the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. We operate out of the University of Colorado at Anschutz campus, out of the Colorado School of Public Health in the Health Systems Management and Policy Department. Kind of have to nestle all of that into there, but we have been up and operating since 2015, have been funded by the foundation since then, and one of our main goals and activities at the program office is to work with the foundation to develop and release annual calls for funding. So all of these funding opportunities are really unique to Systems for Action because each one is soliciting ideas from researchers and their collaborators on how best to align the medical, public health, and social service systems in ways that improve health equity, and also more recently, and in alignment with the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation mission and vision, we're really interested in how aligning those systems can address systemic racism that has been embedded within each one of those systems. So to date, we have released 9 funding opportunities, and we have funded about 45 plus projects. I think it might be 50 to date, since we just launched a new cohort. But one of the things that we ask these grantees to do periodically is to come and present in this research and progress webinar series to just kind of rapidly keep you up to date with what's going on in their projects. You can hear from them in the very beginning on what research they're hoping to do and what their goals are. And you get to hear from them about midway through their projects on what they're learning. And then we ask them to come and present at the very end of their projects as well. So you can hear their final findings. I have a sick kid home with me today. So if you hear some murmurs or see a unicorn, that's my daughter. So thank you so much for joining. Because I have a sick child, my colleague, Dr. LaMont Green, and co-director of the System Alignment Innovation Hub, is actually going to be moderating today. And I'm going to invite him to come on and tell you a little bit more about the System Alignment Innovation Hub and to introduce the team that you're going to be hearing from for the rest of the hour. But thank you so much for joining.
Thank you, Carrington. I hope your little one feels better. So it is so wonderful to be here. Today's featured grantee is part of the Systems for Action Systems Alignment Innovation Hub. And the hub was birthed from Systems for Action and created because of the truth that systems do not change on their own. People change them. And especially when those people are closest to the harm, they are also closest to the wisdom and closest to the solutions, but often furthest from power and resources. So one of the ways that the hub supports this work is through equity capacity building grants. And this is a resource for community-based organizations to strengthen their equity practice, align systems, and move from good intentions to real, lasting action that undo institutional and systemic racism and advance health equity. And so this grant isn't just about dollars, it's about building real capacity, building courage, and building pathways so community-led work can take root, grow, and transform what's possible. And today, it's so fortunate to introduce, and I said I wasn't going to say this, but one of my most favorite community-based organizations and their fabulous leadership truly is the YWCA Madison. Their work, and you're going to hear from them today, really embodies the practices and skills that support the development of foundational relational trust between resident leaders and staff at YWCA Madison. And these practices and foundation are at the heart of the journey of collaboration and researching community needs and planning for transformative action. And they're doing that in such an authentic and powerful way. Oftentimes we hear about community engagement, centering lived experience, right? And sometimes it's not as authentic, and sometimes it's tokenizing. But the YWCA Madison is really doing that practice in a way that we can all deepen our practice by learning from them. And so it is an honor for me now to just pass it over to Andrea Hillman. She is the Residential Housing Director of the YWCA Madison. Andrea.
Thank you, LaMont. So I just wanted to make sure that we introduce ourselves. As LaMont said, I'm Andrea Hillman. I go by Drea. I'm the residential housing director at our downtown resident building. And then I'm going to pass it to Joe.
Hi, I'm Joe Hecht. I'm our single women's housing coordinator at our downtown location in Madison, Wisconsin. And I'm going to pass it to Semaj.
Well, thank you. Good morning, or good afternoon, wherever you're at. I'm Semaj Sconiers. I use she, her pronouns, and I am a race and gender equity practitioner on the Learning and Movement Building team / department. So thank you all for having me, and I will pass it to the lovely Libby.
Hi, everyone. My name is Libby Tucci. I use the pronouns she and her, and I am part of the small and mighty Learning and Movement Building team here at YWCA Madison. And we've been part of this project as support for facilitation, practice, all kinds of things. It's really good to be here with y'all. And I will pass to Felisha.
Hi, I'm Miss Felisha. Oh, I'm sorry. Excuse me. Can everybody? Okay, hi, I'm Miss Felisha. I am a recipient of the project of the leadership program here at the YWCA. My pronouns are she and her, and it's a great pleasure to be in this space with you guys.
Hi, I'm Lexie. I am a resident at the YWCA of Madison in the Third Street program, and I am also a member of the Resident Leadership Program.
I can receive it from you, Lexie. Mi nombre es Geraldine Paredes Vásquez. I also use Jerry. I use the gender pronouns she and ella. And together with being the executive director of YWCA Madison, in this project, I see myself as a co-dreamer, a co-learner, a co-leader, a co-practitioner, and I'm so excited. I just want to say thank you for those beautiful words and introduction, LaMont. We are so excited to be here and to share a little bit about what we're starting to do, because this is a long journey that we hope will continue to transform us. And so thank you so much for this invitation. So I'm going to take it actually from here and share a little bit more about who we are. You heard a little bit, but I always love to just ground us on who we are. We are a 116 years old organization that is committed to the mission of eliminating racism, empowering women, and promoting peace, justice, freedom, and dignity for all. We have been here before, we are still here now, and we were going to continue to be here together with many other justice-oriented organizations and movements and initiatives around the country. I want you all to know that we're also part of a national network of more than 200 civilian associations, and also part of an international network of organizations that are committed to the same mission. Not too long ago, I learned that we are the oldest and the largest women-led organization in the world that is about eliminating racism and empowering women, and I was so excited about that. So that's the ground that we are building from. And particularly at YWCA Madison, we do this work led by our collective values of humanity, community growth, and restoration. We take these values as a practice. These are values that were co-created in conversation with each other, with a process that involved storytelling on what values mean for each of us. And it's about like 3 years ago that it has been another part of the ground that continued to guide us in our work and really in our life as human beings. We do the work in 4 areas of work: housing justice, economic justice, restorative justice, and learning and movement building. And we also do the work in a holistic and integrated way. So even though we have programs in each of these areas, we really do our best to integrate each of these lenses in the work that we do. And I think this experience, together with our beloved resident leaders, is an example of how we need to continue to be doing this in this holistic and integrated way. We have understood, and this is also building on the knowledge of really generations of movement ancestors and present teachers, that in order to dismantle racism and build a liberated world, we need to have a collective approach that is multifaceted, that is nuanced, that is rooted in solidarity, because all systems of oppressions, as we know, are interconnected and they're mutually reinforcing. So the way to face that is to be an actual unapologetic ecosystem of the practice of eliminating racism, empowering women, and the values that can really guide us in this way. So we're so excited to be here today to share with you a little bit of what we are doing in the context of this particular program in this ongoing journey that is constantly transforming us as well. So this journey in particular is rooted in our downtown residence. So let me tell you about this place. You'll hear more from Lexie and from Felisha and from the team here, but we live in a more than 100 years old building. It's, it's a beautiful elder that has beautiful things and also some aches, but most importantly, is located right at downtown in Madison, Wisconsin. We're right at the Capitol Square. And as you all know, systemic racism and oppression usually tends to push out marginalized communities from prime locations. So we're really proud to be right there at the Capitol Square with our building. It's a building that used to be a hotel, and that now is home to 15 single moms in our Third Street program, including Lexie, present today with us, and also children, 17 children, and 61 single women, including Felisha, that is actually joining us today, and elders. We have 29 elders. Some of our residents have been with us for, some months, years. There's people that has been with us for decades. And so it's really a multi-generational space. And we also are one of two family shelter in town that can be a shelter for up to 50 people. And so currently we have 8 families living with us, including adults and children. So this is something that I wanted to share with you so that when you hear about this initiative and this really ongoing journey that we have started, this is where it's happening. This is the community where it's happening. So I'm going to pass it now, I believe, to Drea to share a little bit more about this particular initiative.
So thank you so much, Jerry. I want to start by saying this is phase 1 of our program. So we got more to come. But we really wanted to make sure with our resident leadership program that we understand, I think Dr. LaMont had said it a little earlier, that the people that are in the crisis or that are living, that have the lived experience is the best ones to be able to advocate and be able to change those and make solutions. So we really wanted to be very intentional about making sure that we amplify our resident voice and also develop our leadership skills, not only with the residents, but also with staff. We were very intentional about creating a process to engage our whole downtown residents community. And that's everyone that lives here, including staff as well. So when I say the whole downtown residents community, I'm also thinking about our staff as well. We were able to do a collaboration between our residential housing team and also our learning and movement building team. And our longer journey our hope is to foster collaborations with systems to be responsive to the needs of our residents as well. We were able to do this with our collaboration between our research partners in Ubuntu. And the first phase of this was our residents was able to identify their leadership skills and identify the things that they needed and actually apply for our resident leadership program. And a part of that as well was our residents was compensated for that time in a way that helped them or was good for them. Part of Ubuntu's job was to, when we first started with Ubuntu, we had a full-day retreat, which consisted of us co-collaborating and creating our values and our working agreements. And then with that, Ubuntu was able to assess a resident-led assessment that we created, and then also come up with recommendations based on what the resident needs assessment said.
Yes. And I think I want to draw on and build on that sharing about the co-creating of the values and the working agreements, because that is precisely just right at the very, very beginning of the process was precisely the moment where we had the opportunity to understand what was present and how we wanted to be responsive and adaptive and grounded in relationship and relational trust as a part of that process. Because we were imagining that the kickoff retreat would have those values and working agreements, and we'd be able to roll from there. And like many things often are when we're bringing people together and there's a need for relational trust and all kinds of things, we noticed that the process was going to need more time, was going to need more space, was going to need a revisit. And so we started with the process of co-creating our shared values and our working agreements for the group on that retreat. And then we revisited the next time that we had the next session. And then we revisited it over and over and over again. But it was one of the moments of noticing how we wanted to be adaptive and responsive to what was present with us and within the group. And so that continued throughout the rest of the sort of journey and process. So from that retreat that we shared, we spent the next 6 months engaging with some really key frameworks, skills, and practices to sort of coalesce and create the kinds of supports and a sense of hopefully like a sense of confidence for being able to move into the needs assessment portion. We knew we wanted to engage the residents community in a needs assessment. We wanted to make sure that the resident leaders had everything that we needed to be able to do that. So Ubuntu brought a bunch of frameworks around dignity-based beloved community. What does that look like in practice? How do you engage in analysis and really attend to like the needs, the opportunities, the improvements, strengths, and exceptions that may be needed in a way that's grounded in dignity-based beloved and community first and foremost? Connecting around the possibilities when we're in community like this for really engaging in accountability. What is accountability? How does it work in relationship with transformative justice? How is what we're hoping to move with here today and what we're shaping here today related to housing justice and the systems of injustice that have created the inequities around housing that we're all sort of navigating, right? And so all of these frameworks were present and moving. And also in addition to sort of the framing, we had opportunities for getting into really specific practices that we knew would support all of us in being able to not only be a community and container with each other, but also to be a community to support the process of engaging in the broader residential community for that needs assessment, and just spent a whole session just practicing with empathic listening and what that's like in an embodied way. What's this like, right? What's it like when I listen? What is it like when I open myself to this listening and receiving those stories? In addition to lots of other practices. And we'll talk more about all of that later. And then also we heard from and had support around frameworks for how to visualize data in a way that makes meaning of things that are related to our goals and amplifying resident voice. Explored the use of photo voice as a method for data collection and sort of getting into that, learning about how photo voice can be an impactful method for being able to engage in data collection. And then like, so some time like getting connected with those frameworks, et cetera, and supporting that. And then actually getting into the actual needs assessment. So resident leaders engaging in the collection of data, using both photo voice, but also additional methods beyond the photo voice that residents identified as being responsive to their process. So more on that a little bit later. But so engaging in data collection, using photo voice and some other things. And then also using all of that, bringing all that data together to with our research partners at Ubuntu, then really exploring what came up, seeing what do people here really enjoy and love about being in this community, and what are the opportunities for that could be transformed. What are the needs that people have? What do people want to ask for? And so in bringing all of that together and in dialogue with the folks at Ubuntu, then sort of exploring what emerged from the needs assessment. And then in dialogue, also noticing where there were gaps and then filling in those gaps to be able to inform a process for what are the recommendations that we want to make going forward for into phase 2 and 3 and beyond, right? But letting that be the dialogue also then being a place of emergence for noticing what is and is not present, so that needs assessment and the recommendations that come out of it are again grounded in the experiences here. So that's like the overview of the sort of process and what we got into. And like I said, pretty early on in that process, there were some dynamics that emerged that we knew that we wanted to be able to attend to and be responsive to and ground ourselves into a foundation of relational trust for the ways that we could adapt to and get put the supports in place to be able to be responsive to that. So we'll talk about each one of these more specifically in a moment, but broadly, we're bringing this group together for the first time. And so immediately there was this need for community building with the group of leaders themselves, and also in being able to set a container for shared practice for folks coming together, and really having a landing in together for how we're going to be working together, right? And then also in that process, so there's a pretty broad spectrum of experiences and histories, trauma histories, stories, experiences, all those kinds of things, and relationships with these kinds of processes within both the resident leaders group and also in the broader downtown resident community, right? And so bringing together all of those experiences allowed us to sort of see opportunities for being able to be adaptive to each person's needs and how to be responsive to that. And then the last dynamic that felt important to be responsive to is that there were times where some of the frameworks related to the research process could lean towards academic language and processes that could at times cause a sense of disconnect and could be less accessible. And so there was an opportunity there for us to draw on our practice and our relationships with one another and the ways that we care for each other to be able to be responsive to that. So we'll talk about each one of those specifically and hear from folks, but wanted to say that that's generally what we noticed that we wanted to be able to, that we knew that drawing on and developing our relational trust around was going to be supportive in being able to be responsive to these things. So the first one I want to just name then is going a little bit more specifically towards that first one. So this need for community building and setting a container for shared practice. We already mentioned a little bit of like right away, like, all right, y'all, we're going to have to slow this process down. And we're going to want to ensure that when we gather that there's lots of space. We added in additional sessions beyond the ones that we were already planning on to be able to have spaces for integration, for practice, for sense making together, for that would be sort of supplemental to the ongoing sessions and connections that we would have with our research partners. Is that there's the time with the frameworks and the stuff, and then there's the sessions where we're like, all right, let's make sense of this together, right? And so we added that in as a component of it for those additional spaces. But again, like I said, spent more time with the values and the working agreements to really set that foundation, which we'll hear more from folks about in a moment. But in that, one of the things that felt really important about that too is that as we had those additional spaces of connection, that as we got to know each other and that support and trust, going from kind of in some places full-blown strangers to actually being oh yeah, we're a crew now, meant that it was possible for the needs assessment part, that, to be able to speak to yeah, all the stuff that we like about the residential community here, but also the stuff that needs to be transformed, right? And so that relational trust of actually knowing and having a sense of care and like trust with each other made it more possible for folks to feel the opportunity or be able to genuinely be honest about like what does need to be transformed, like without having to like throw any glitter on it or whatever, but like literally there's just stuff here that actually does need to be transformed, but to having the ground of trust to be able to know that that's possible without fear. So I think with that, I want to stop sharing so that we can actually just hear a little bit. That's like the broad overview of some of that dynamic, but want to toss to our resident leaders here to be able to hear from you about your experiences with this, right? Like that's the deal. We know that we're like, so in the realm of like thinking about when you think back to your experience with building community and having that coming together around like sharing practice together. Lexie and Felisha, what were your experiences with that process? What was that like for you?
Well, I kind of want to start with sharing our community agreements and values that we came up with everybody. So I'm gonna try to hold them up so you can see some of them. Yeah, I brought it with, but some of the things we had to learn to do with each other is frogs and turtles, balancing space and taking space and making space for other people, making it a judgment-free zone. But putting this on paper allowed everybody in the group to see that we all want these things for each other. It's not just one or the other. The values we had were honesty, respect, vulnerability, compassion for others, and that just opened a space for us as residents and as for staff to create that wonderful space to even get anything going. I don't know what I'm saying in this program. Yeah.
So, I just wanted to say, oh, I'm sorry. I just want to say this was a great opportunity to be able to come forward and, like Lexie said, just be able to share some of the values in which that we had established at the beginning to be able to really appreciate each other as a whole and learn from our ups and downs and just being a resident leader to be able to give other people some enthusiastic relief for some of the ins and out of what they want to accomplish, as well as just being in a perfect positive space. It taught me a lot as far as when I go out in the community, because I am a Black trans woman, and being in this space, it was so enthusiastic because they allowed me to be here, and that started the process in me in the trust factors. Because, like I said, out in the community, me being in the other community outside, trust factors always are a part of my life. But being a part of this leadership program, it really, really, really I built a lot of trust within me to be able to share that, and to also share the things that we set forth in asking people how they felt about the one-on-one here. Oh, and by the way, I am a resident here too. So, yeah, thank you. um, but as I was saying, the experience in itself, I am so grateful for the staff that was able to facilitate, the ins and outs of the process in which that we are trying to establish ourselves, not only as resident leaders, but give people inspiration to say, what do you like about here? What can we be transforming when it comes to, later dealing with dealing with some of the concerns. A lot of times people were kind of reluctant, but to be able to share totally some of the ins and outs, but they felt comfortable in sharing because we tried to relate in their path of being here, at the one-on-one. So I'm looking forward and continue to go forward, like Libby said, 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever. That. So yeah. Okay.
If
Okay.
anyone wants to explain frogs and turtles.
No, go ahead, Lexie. Mm.
I don't want to, Libby. I'm too
Okay.
nervous.
So okay, well, anyways, I think frogs and turtles, it's I guess it was to explain the process in which that we become, frogs, meaning that we jump into, situations that will promote, wellness between the residents here, and what we are like to be transforming, but the turtle aspect, I think it was more so, taking your time and trying to understand the process, in which the whole thing is a process, and that we have to continue to just be very vigilant when it comes to what we like to change, and just what we can take from each other, from the community as a whole, to be able to be transforming. I, it's Yeah,
No,
so yeah, go
I'm
ahead.
sorry, Luck. I was just gonna chime in too. Something that was beautiful about this process too, because
Uh-huh.
Miss Felicia, I wanted to just tie in how we first got introduced to it. And
Yeah.
it was also this practice that we used every time we met, to really focus in and honor and uplift, like, shared voice, shared experience, right? And
Oh, that's
acknowledging that some of us are a lot more outgoing when it comes down to being in community conversations, while some of us are a little bit more reserved. And watching us over the course of the few months that we were together, we watched and saw people go in and out of the frog and turtle practice, right? Especially when it came down to the depth in which we got deeper into the processes and the stories and things like that. So one of those practices, beyond like empathic listening, we always revisited what it meant to share space, what it meant to share voice. And I think this other layer that's really important around community building is us being able to bear witness to one another and
mm-hmm.
authentically hold each other's story and experiences. Um, that's what also emerged from this idea of frogs and turtles. We started out as a process to just be like, how do we share space and voice? But it emerged into something that honestly started to show through the data collection, the ways in which we held space with one another, and just how we were able to pause um, in the midst of trying to figure it all out while also being on this timeline. So I just wanted to also add in that layer and show how it expanded, and we thought it was just going to be something that was just going to be, and I think values often have this, they're beautiful on paper, but how do we actually make them into practices? And so that was one of those practices. That was one of those values that actually became a practice for us, even in some of those unintentional ways, which is really beautiful. So I just wanted to add that to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Semaj, and thank you, Felisha, for that too. I wanted also to echo this thing that I think came up in our conversation right now, that part of this, as Libby was saying, was us gaining confidence on doing this together, right? And Lexie, when you were chiming in, I heard you share the amazing work around the co-created values, and also sometimes thinking that like it is a very vulnerable thing to engage in leadership, right? And to lean in towards each other. And sometimes we can doubt about ourselves, right? And so I just wanted to say that the values in that way can help us to have a ground to come back to. And that when those moments show up where we are thinking that what we are offering is not enough, it's a way to ground ourselves again, right? I do remember, even for me, like when we were in the retreat that we were invited in Denver, and there was this thing of acknowledging that we can be community researchers, right? And it was like, what that does even mean, right, Felisha, right, Lexie, like, right, team? It's kind of like, what are we community? What do you mean, And then it's kind of like going back to this thing that Drea was saying, right? That it's kind of like, actually, you all with the lived experience and us as an organization that is on the ground, we have a lot to offer to lead research, to actually shape policy, right? And so part of this exercise with each other is leaning into these spaces that feel vulnerable a little bit, right? It's kind of like, am I saying the right thing or not, or whatever, and then actually practice with that. And this little, kind of like spaces of skills and support, and actually plain love that we can create in spaces for each other, support us in not just grow each of us, but really support the world in creating better things, better policy, more equitable practices, shape things in a way that actually matter, right? So I just wanted to say that. I wanted to also speak a little bit about another thread that came up, and I wanted to ask Semaj if you can help us with sharing the slide on the other dynamic that came up in the conversations, which is the vast spectrum of experiences and histories, and even at some point trauma that comes up when we gather in community like that, right? And again, like kind of like what you're gonna hear us naming over and over is like, this is true for everyone in this community. And we mean everyone, right? Like it's residents, staff, everyone, right? Like when we are engaging in this process, we are engaging in a way that is tapping into these spaces, right? And so how important is to then also create agreements to work together that build on those values that the team and you all were co-creating in these spaces of learning. I would say what we like to call also unlearning, right? It's kind of like the things that you learn and the things that you need to unlearn in order to make space for the new ways of being with each other, the new ways of collaborating that sometimes are not even new. They're even like ancestral, right? And it's kind of like, how can we relate to each other from a place that it's more rooted in those grounding values? And that after, that this is also really important to be able to bring to life the frameworks and the ideas in a way that has integrity. And in the case of you all was through the process of creating the community assessment, right, as resident leaders together with the staff that supported this, and then carrying that out. And it was so beautiful to hear from each of you about how that process was, right? Like how it's also vulnerable to go and ask your neighbor, kind of like Felisha, you were talking a little bit about this before, right? It's like we're having conversations about what is beautiful and also about the things that we need to change. And I'm not meaning just physical changes in the building. I'm meaning the things that we want to get into in this journey, which is like creating policy together inside our building, and then we can take that practice to the relationship that we want to grow with systems outside, right? And how that needs to be like a longer journey. Yeah. And this is the thing that I always keep reminding myself, this last one that we see in the slide, like how that takes space, and grace, right? We need the space to be able to experience each other in a different way. We need to be mindful of our pace. I'm saying that to myself too, because when I get excited, I talk really fast because I'm so excited, And it's like, and also the pace in our days, the pace of a project, the pace of what we thought this was going to be. And, then is taking these different routes that are important to take, because otherwise it doesn't have integrity, as Dr. LaMont was reminding us. Otherwise it can turn into tokenizing, and we don't want to do that. Otherwise it could turn into like just performative like nonsense, and we don't want to do that, right? And so how in the pace then we learn from each other, and we really are calling each other back to that place of integrity. And we're human beings, we are meant to make mistakes, and that's where the grace comes in, right? It's kind of like, as we're doing this, when a mistake happens, not if, but when a mistake happens, how can we turn it into an opportunity for learning, for growth, for change, and I would even say sometimes for restoration, right? For a deeper understanding of like what actually called us into this practice and how we can shape that, right? Yeah. And so that's the other thread that came out of all of this. And I'll be curious to hear a little bit from both of you and anyone else in the team of what came up in your experience of this dynamic as we work through this together.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'll start out by saying, can you guys hear me? Okay, I'll start by saying that this process in itself, it taught me how to listen. That was the one thing that it was very important to the whole process, because as a leadership, as someone who's in a leadership role, I want to be able to listen to the individual to see what they do like about being here at the one-on-one as far as the community, or what they dislike, and what can we relate in transformation and making things better for that process. But it was a good experience, like I said, in a learning process in which I was listening and trying to be able to have as much information that I can provide to be able to give them a better way to say, okay, well, this too is going to change and it's going to be better in that regards, because it all relates together as a whole. Me as a resident here, it is very concerning, because I'm a part of I'm a part as a whole with everything else. But I think that everything that I learned, and I think everything that people were able to share with each other, is that process in which we look at things, it can relate not only in the one-on-one community, but also in the outside communities too, to be able to share a process in which that they learn from listening, to being able to be assertive. Assertive and all those things, because I did learn as a resident leader how to listen and also to be assertive in what I was trying to set forth, in that process. Yeah. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. I just want to share about how when we were at the beginning of the slide, when you were showing about how many families are here, how many single women are here, how many just the people that were in resident leadership, we didn't know who was going to be accepted into the program, right? We didn't know who was going to be there at that first meeting, if we were going to like them, if we were going to jive with them, And so when we got to know each other and got to spend time with each other and talk to each other, we started seeing like, hey, we're from completely different walks of life, but hey, we wanted this to change. We want this to be able to hear people's concerns and what they wanted, what goals they had, and to see how the things that were similar was that people feel safe here. I'm one of the people that I feel safe. I feel safe with my daughter here. I feel safe at night here. That's one of the things that I had a trauma and something in my history. And this group has allowed me to go out of my comfort zone, has allowed me to meet Felisha, meet other people in the resident leadership that I would have never talked to. I would have just walked by them. So I think that, and then during our research too, finding out and talking to people, everybody feel safe. Everybody wants to feel what was the word, autonomy? Is that the word?
Autonomy, yeah.
We're all one, we're all one, and I'm in a different program than Felisha's in here at the Y, and just that feeling of wanting to be one. And that's what I'm so glad that this is what this program has allowed us to do, to that we're taking steps to where we can be one community. Yeah.
Yeah. And to feel so safe being in this community. That is one of the things that really stood out to me as being a Black trans woman here in Madison, Wisconsin. Madison, and being able to go outside the one-on-one and to be inside. I feel safe. I learned safety, and it's really a great experience to be able to be a part of something so big and detrimental. Yeah.
Mm.
I just wanted to touch base on that a little bit as well, because I'm so happy to hear that everyone feels safe here. And I also wanted to touch base on what Felisha said as far as listening, because I think as staff as well, that is very important for us to be able to do and hear out what our residents need. Another thing that I wanted to bring up was another resident leader. I will never forget that when we brought up the photo voice and we brought up how we were going to do the assessment, she stopped and she was like, "Hey, this is not something that I'm comfortable with doing, and maybe other people will not be comfortable with doing this as well. Can we pivot, and can we do it this way? Can we write? Can we just record? Can we, So I really do think that having that relational trust that we worked so hard to build, and actually being able to practice listening, we were able to pivot and understand and hear what that particular resident leader was saying. So I just wanted to throw that out there as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we adapted the whole process for the data collection accordingly then, right? Like that, like with a whole menu of options for what it would look like to actually bring that data collection in and visualize the data, all of that. It informed everything after that.
Yeah. And I just want to add, as we entered into this, we expected, because it is a longer process and all of our folks have very different lives and needs, that we would see some drop off from some of the folks involved. And I want to point out that of the 8 people that started with us, 7 people made it through the entire 6 months, the entire first phase with us. And I think that speaks to the folks that were involved and the amazing work that they were doing, but also the process itself and being the type of comfortable, responsive process that helped folks stay engaged and keep going with us.
Wow, this is amazing. Are y'all ready to get some Q&A from our participants?
Yes.
Wow. So everyone, you can use the Q&A. You can see it there at the bottom of your screen, and you can type in your question. So please submit your questions now, and we will read that. And while folks are typing their questions for the Q&A, I just want to thank you all. I've learned so much today. So I want to highlight some of the things that I've learned from you all. First, some of the frameworks that you utilize with Ubuntu, like dignity-based beloved community. I cannot wait to look that up. That sounds so beautiful. Dignity-based beloved community. And the noise analysis, that was something that was also very new. And something that I saw that you all did throughout the whole process that really demonstrates authentic community engagement and sharing power is that you really slowed down, like Geraldine talked about, space, pace, and grace, and how you all learned that you needed more time for community building and building that values for people to share their histories and their trauma. And so often we rush through the work and our sense of urgency and agendas and professionalism. And a mentor told me once, professionalism never saved anybody. And so your work is so refreshing in its fullness of humanity. It's just so beautiful how you all are doing that. And I love when Libby mentioned dialogue being a place of emergence. Dialogue being a place of emergence. And what Lexie and Felisha shared. Lexie shared about the community agreements and that grounding. And Felisha as a Black trans woman, right, in Wisconsin. And the sense of belonging and safety and empowerment, how you all didn't try to empower people, but you created a space for people to get a sense of their own empowerment and to build that trust. It's just, it's so amazing. I could go on forever and ever, but I have 2 pages of notes here. But Andrea, I see your hand.
That was an accident. I did not mean to do that. I was trying to do a heart emoji because I resonated with everything you were saying.
And I just pray and hope that y'all are able to do phase 2 and phase 3. Those of you that are listening, if you're a fan, go to the YWCA website and donate. But this is why this work needs to be sustainable too, and why trust-based philanthropy is so important. Because what you all are building and transforming in the community, and then in your next phases where you're going to be able to engage systems, that's going to be some powerful change. And so I am really hoping that this work continues. Okay, so we got a question that has come in, and this is from Sam Hurst. And Sam mentioned, I had chills listening to the incredible transformative work that you all are doing together. Kudos to each of you for opening your heart to the humanity of what community can be. Please explain where dignity-based beloved community came from. It's lovely. Thank you, Sam. So Sam would like, there you go, Geraldine.
I can share. So dignity-based beloved community is a frame that our beloved partners, the Ubuntu Research and Evaluation have, that is really about how when we are building community, needs to be about both, right? Like how we are making sure that we are relating to each other from a place of love and accompanying each other in the process that it's actually becoming a community, right? And that also involves the practice of accountability, right? And that when we are engaging in anything that has to do with really anything in life, but in particularly is about relating to each other, and especially when that comes with power differentials, right? Like that could come with roles, and which is something that is true when you are an organization that is providing services to people. You need to really ground yourself in mutual dignity as a way to relate to each other from a place that you're not tapping into the abuse of power. And so understanding that as a foundation, and then moving from there, that changes the way that we can have conversations, kind of like what Felisha was saying, that when we're going to be talking about the things that need to change, that might also come with the fact that we're talking about that across roles and across proximity to power inside the structural piece of an organization, right? And so when we're doing that with acknowledgement that mutual dignity is something that is unquestionable for each other, is different than the absence of that. And so that brings a different way of engaging in the process of change and accountability, right? And that goes across the board, right? Like for me as an executive director, that shows up in a particular way, as it does for anyone in this community, residents, staff, etc. And we all need to be able to name that and hold that part so that we can move with it in a way that is transformative. So that's from where that comes. And we also fell in love when we learned it's something that was developed by Ubuntu Research and Evaluation, and they have been our partner not just for this particular project, but also with other projects in our organization. And that's why we felt they were the perfect partner to start this project.
Mm-hmm. And if you don't mind, I'd just like to say this, that, breaking down, the dignity and the love, me being here, being a part of the program as a Black trans woman, the dignity that the staff here showed me in reference to being able to be accepted here as a resident was so profound that I just couldn't believe it. But but it has taught me that, okay, they trust that I am being able to express myself the way I want to, and being able to just have within the leadership role and stuff like that, that they trust that I would make the right decisions. When it comes to being a part of asking people questions about how they feel about being here. And then that opens them up to the possibilities that, wow, I didn't know anything about your life. I didn't know anything about trans people in general. And now I see where you're coming from, and I can trust that you'll be able to be along those same lines, to be able to feel comfortable and asking me questions or telling me your philosophies, and just being informative. And that's where the love comes in at. I love being a part of the one-on-one. I love that they're teaching me certain things and being, relevant, not only for the one-on-one, but just for the community outside of here too. It really was a great experience.
Felisha, that is so beautiful, because we know the struggles that Black, Brown, and Indigenous trans women especially face in the United States of America, especially during these times. And so creating that community of belonging and safety, and the testimony of how empowered and safe you feel, is a really good barometer of the work that you all are doing in YWCA Madison. That is so beautiful.
Thank you.
And so I just want to encourage participants, don't hold back. If you have any questions and answers, just use that Q&A box. And I see Marvin here also had a similar question earlier, but that one's resolved. He also wanted to know more about the dignity-based beloved community, and you all answered that for us. And so while we're waiting for more questions to come in, something like what's happening in our world right now, right, with these horrible ICE raids and how residents are feeling, people are being really threatened, right? And like, how has that been for you all in this context of this work and the attacks that so many residents, with or without papers, are facing in the United States?
Well, I will start out by saying, well, I like the work because it shows the people that it shows other people that we can do, we can be a positive base for a positive community, whether you black, brown, whatever it may be, trans, non-trans, a part of the LGBTQ community. We can do the work and be able to be one with each other. And it's just unfortunate that, people of power is not allowing us to, trans women or trans people in general, not to be able to be contributors to society. And when it comes to the military, military forces and stuff like that, because regardless if I like to wear makeup or not, doesn't mean that I can't be able to help and protect this country, and that's the unfortunate thing of it all, that people just don't believe in being transformed into where you need to be transformed in and act. Yeah.
Thank you, Sister Felisha, for naming
May I
that.
add something?
Mm-hmm.
When the ICE stuff started happening more severely in Minnesota, the YWCA staff put out a piece of mail in our mailboxes, just a reminder to be using our keys at the front door, things like that, to ensure that it stayed a safe place at all times, 24/7, no matter what it is, that the people that are in this building feel safe, that they know what color their skin is, where they're from, this is a safe place. And I'm so proud to be part of this community and to know that I'm one of the people that I finally feel for the first time in a long time completely and genuinely safe where I live.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, thank you, Lexie.
Yes.
Nice. And so I know we only got 1 minute left. Time has flown by, but could y'all give us a little taste of what you're thinking for phase 2?
I would love to chime in with that. And then we can kind of like follow that. Definitely in the ongoing work, we want to continue to collaborate with outside community organizations to continue to build on this ecosystem of support based on what we're hearing from residents about what is needed and what is meaningful, the kind of supports that are important. We're also very excited to start moving into a phase that will help us to work together into creating and changing policy in the same way, internal policy here in the building that supports more the experience of residents here in the building, and continue, to develop the leadership skills that we're having, specifically listening to what has come out of this first report with the recommendations of the community needs assessment that was led by our beloved residents here. So that's kind of like some of what is starting to show up. We are excited to open up again applications for a second round of resident leaders. So the second round will have some residents that are continuing the journey with new residents joining that. And I think something that you have heard today quite a lot is that we want to continue this practice of moving at the speed of trust. And some of you might know that this is one of the principles of emergent strategy that is the work of Adrienne Marie Brown. And we think that's the way to go. Otherwise, we stay, as you were saying, LaMont, we stay surface, we don't create depth, we don't create things that are real. And it's important to continue that practice. Continue to engage with additional skills and practices in that journey. And some of the things that have been coming up from conversations and in the spaces of practice that we have is to engage more of a restorative approach in the work that we are doing. Also learning more about how stress responses is just part of being human beings, right? And it's going to show up whenever we are experiencing a sense of vulnerability or threat, and that we need to be aware of that and work with that. So a lot of like healing centered related content is coming up to the surface as something that we want to explore more. And then continuing to be grounded on dignity and beloved community and dignity in the process that we're doing, engaging a little bit of skills and conflict transformation, and then putting all of that into practice for shared decision making moving forward. So that's a little bit of what is coming up. Anyone wants to chime in anything else from what you know about where we want to be continuing this journey?
Well, I just want to say I am so enthusiastic about continuing the journey and being able to learn much more than what I started out as. And it's going to be a really, really, really a great experience. And I'm looking forward because the staff here at the YWCA is so, I love all of y'all because y'all are such teaching tools, and I'm able to just go forward and just being comfortable, being able to share the spaces with you guys.
Yeah,
that is awesome. I know. Wow, it's already 2 minutes after, and the time just flew by. But hopefully, we could have you all back again. Thank you, Systems for Action, for hosting this research and progress webinar. Thank you, and YWCA, thank y'all for the amazing work you're doing. And those of you that are still here, know that you can go to the Systems for Action website to be able to get this recording for today, and also on their LinkedIn. Love y'all. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you so much. Love you all.
Bye, y'all.